Okay. Today we're going to talk about everything you need to know about using a big green egg. Okay. So first, let's talk about how a big green egg works in the first place. Maybe the most important part is that it's made out of ceramic, and when this heats up, it cooks very, very efficiently, and that's really important, and that's why you can smoke things, and I've even kept a lump of charcoal going for 24 hours, going low and slow with this thing too. So it's really efficient, it works great. I'm going to show you how it works. So the air flows in through the bottom, up through the coals, and then comes out of the chimney. And I'm using a different chimney on here, but you can see there's like a hole in the top, and the air and the smoke come out through the chimney. So first off, when you're going to light the big green egg, the first thing you need to do is clean it out from your last cook. So we will do that right now. So before you light your big green egg, you got to clean it out. So get your ash bucket, which is something that I always keep on hand. Got this bad boy on Amazon, and we're going to get the ashes out. So first thing first, I have something called a kick ash basket in my big green egg, and it works like this. So I pick up the basket, and all the coals that are left from my last cook are in here, but there's also a bunch of ash in there that we want to get out of it. So you shake it. So I'm shaking it, the ash is gone, but the coals are still here. And I'm gonna set it aside. And there's a lot of ash over here. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up my ash tool. Yes, that's somehow what this is called, an ash tool. And I don't know if you want to get the show the people what's going on in here, but all this extra ash here that's on the sides, I'm just kind of scraping into the bottom. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Now typically at this point, you're going to go in through the hole at the bottom, but I have this other little can that sits at the bottom, and all the ashes that we just shook out are just in here. So I'm going to open my ash bucket, and I'm going to dump the ashes in. But we do still have a few left in there, and for the people who don't have one of these cans, I'm going to show you how it works. Next up, you're going to need to get your, what is this, a shovel? I don't know. You put ashes in here. And your ash tool. And there's a little lip at the bottom of the big green egg here. And this sits in, so all your big green eggs will come with this, even though I don't know what it's called. And it sits in here. It's a pan, ash pan. It's an ash pan. And you take your ash tool and just kind of come in, and any of the excess ash that we didn't get, you scrape it out. No big deal, but it's better to just keep everything as clean as you can. So there we go. We will dump the rest of our ashes in. And it's that easy. That's how you clean the big green egg before you light it. Okay, so now we're ready to light the big green egg, and we have some leftover coals from my last cook. And this is what it looks like, just so you know. It's not a ton, but that's what's left over from my last cook. And if you don't have anything left over, or if this is your first time, just put about that much in, because this is a good way to light it, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So first thing first, I'm gonna push the ashes that I have into a mound together. The easiest way for me to do that, I just use my hand, and I just push them towards the back of the big green egg. So if you've got a shot of this, I'm just gonna kind of move the ashes toward the back. So now that we're ready to light our big green egg, I'm gonna use my Luft lighter here, which kind of works like a hair dryer. It just blows hot air onto the coals and lights a fire. Or Big Green Egg sells these little squares that are fire starters. You can use those as well. I'm gonna use my Luft lighter, and I'm just gonna put it at the bottom of this mound of coals that I made, and I'm gonna hold it down here until we have a fire. So we lit our coals that were left over from the last cook, and we waited 10 or 15 minutes. And now it's saying that the grill's 350 degrees. But let's slowly open the lid, which is important because you can like blast off your eyebrows if you just open it too fast. So open it slow. And Kyle, why don't you show them kind of what the inside looks like here? So we have some coals going, and it's not a ton, but they're down here at the bottom. So I'm going to take my ash tool here, multi-purpose ash tool, and I'm just going to scrape the leftover coals around on the bottom to kind of evenly coat the bottom with the really hot coals. And now that I did that, I'm going to put my fresh coals on top. And the reason is because since the air comes in through the bottom, it's best for the fire to be on the bottom. If you try to light your fire on the top, it'll just kind of keep burning down and leave a bunch of ashes in your fresh coals. So we're going to start with hot coals on the bottom and then build the fire up from there. So Big Green Eggs use lump hardwood charcoal. It's just pieces of wood. You don't want to put briquettes in your Big Green Egg. And I'm just going to dump some in. And I'm not going to do a ton, but I'm just going to get a good little layer on the bottom. So we have our fire going in the Big Green Egg with a fresh coal on top. And when you buy a Big Green Egg, you might see the advertisements that are like grill, roast, smoke, or bake. You could grill, roast, smoke, or bake on a Big Green Egg. And first we're going to talk about grilling. And another way to say that might be that we're going to use direct heat. Direct heat means that we are going to cook right over the coals. There's going to be nothing between it. So we're using direct heat, and I'm going to take my grid lifter here, which is pretty handy. Big Green Egg makes them, and I'm going to pick up my grid. So half my cooking grid going directly over the fire, then the other half goes on. So when you think of direct heat, it's basically regular grilling. You're grilling your food over a hot source that's directly beneath it, and then you flip the food so that you get even coloration and cooking on both sides. So let's say you're gonna grill something, you're gonna grill some boneless, skinless chicken breast, and you lit your fire, you have your grates on, and this temperature might say, you know, it's 400, 450 degrees, which is a really good grilling temperature for a lot of things. Anywhere between 350 and 450 is a good place to grill. You can grill as hot as 700 or something if you're grilling a steak. But let's just say that. So we see the temperature rise up and it says 400 degrees, but I might look inside and see that I still have some coals that aren't lit yet. And what that tells me is that even though this says it's 400 degrees, there are still some cool spots that aren't going to cook your meat. So when you're using direct grilling, it's good to let your coals get really, really hot, and you'll notice them kind of get white and ashy all over. And one way to do that is to just use your ash tool and move the coals around so that they're evenly distributed and they're all really hot. And when none of them look black like they did coming out of the bag before, but they're all ashy looking, they're white, red hot, that's how you know you're ready to use your direct cooking. And you can even use your hand to determine, like a lot of times in my Big Green Egg, the fire's the hottest closest to the back and it's a little bit cooler up here. And you can put your meat on, you flip it when it's time, just like your regular grilling. So next up, we're going to talk about indirect cooking on the Big Green Egg, and this is my favorite way to use the Big Green Egg. Indirect cooking basically just means that instead of direct cooking where there are coals right beneath your food, when you're indirect cooking, there's something in the way of the food so that the heat is going around it, but it's not directly below it. So for me, I like to use this. This is, Big Green Egg makes this, and it's called the Egg Expander Kit, which is very funny. So when you use this, you get these handles, and I'll let you see what the parts are here. So I broke my convegator, which is basically it's just a piece of ceramic that lets everything be indirect. I covered it with aluminum foil here because I don't like getting grease all over it. So I'm gonna put this here in the egg expander. And I also have a drip pan. And a drip pan is great when you're cooking things indirect because it catches the fat and stuff that drips down, and it doesn't go into your fire, which creates a grease fire. So I really like to use these, and this one's made by Smokeware. They make some good stuff for big green eggs, but I'm gonna put that on top of the convegator, and I have a coal bed going here, so I'm gonna go ahead, now that I have my coals going, I'm just gonna pick this up and drop it in. So now we have our grates to put our food on, but right below it we have a drip pan, and we have the convegator to deflect the heat. So the heat's gonna be going all around the food instead of just right below the food. And it's smart a lot of times to just put a little bit of water in the drip pan so that when it catches liquids and fat, it doesn't burn, but also because it just adds some more moisture to the grill, which a lot of times is a good thing. Not all the time, but a lot of times that's good. So when you're using indirect heat like this, you could be roasting, smoking, or baking, like I said earlier. So roasting, you would, let's say you could put a whole chicken on here. I like doing a buttermilk marinated roasted chicken, and I would just marinate it, put the chicken on, and let it roast at 400 degrees or so. Now, if I was gonna smoke something, all you do is you add wood chunks or wood chips on top of your coals. So these are some of my little wood chunk chippy things that I have here. So they might look like this, kind of narrow. This is like a wood chunk. It's a oak wood. Smells good. I like oak. Use it in a lot of things that I cook. And you would just put these directly on top of the coals, or you can mix them in. And also you can bake too. A lot of people like to make pizzas on their big green egg, but you could use this just like an oven. So if you want to bake a loaf of bread, you can do that because the big green egg is sort of like a big outdoor oven, which is amazing. The last thing to talk about is whether you're using direct heat or indirect heat. The way that you control your temperature is really important, and it's also pretty easy. So the first way is this at the bottom. We have this little sliding door, and when it's all the way open, it's letting the most air in, which creates a hotter fire. When we close it down, you're letting less air in. It makes a cooler fire. So if I was going to be using direct heat, I would probably almost always have this thing wide open at the bottom. And if I'm smoking a pork butt or something and I'm going real low and slow, 225 degrees, 250 degrees, I might close it almost all the way where there's just a little gap. So that's what's going on at the bottom. Let's take a look at the chimney, because this also has an effect on our heat. And it's the same thing. So this is what my chimney looks like. There are a few different ones, but it's all the same principle. So when it's wide open, the hotter it can get. And if I'm doing direct grilling, I'll either keep it wide open or sometimes just pull it all the way off and you can get a really hot fire. But if I'm smoking something really low and slow, I might close it down so I can only see a little bit of an opening there, and that keeps our fire just really low. And it's just about that simple. The only thing I'll say to you is when you're adjusting your temperature, you might see some jumps in the temperature, and that's normal. You don't want to make drastic moves, just like a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch at a time on the top and the bottom. And wait a little while to let it settle in, and that's how you can get good at regulating the temperature on your big green egg. So now we know how to use the big green egg, but there's a few things to watch out for. The first one that I'll talk about, which is just something to notice, is sometimes when you're reading forums, you'll see people talking about the dome temp, which this is the top of the dome, this part of the big green egg, the dome temperature versus the grate temperature. So the grate is right here and the dome is right here, and there will always be a difference in temperature between this and this. Hot air rises, so a lot of times this will read hotter than the grate actually is. So that's something that you want to look out for, but if you really want to make sure, you can get a thermometer that has a little clip like this that will just attach onto the grate, and this connects to a thermometer, like with an LCD readout screen, and that way you can know exactly what the temperature of your grate is. So that's just an option and something to think about. So now you should know how to use a big green egg. If you have any extra questions, please leave a comment and we'll try to get back to you on that as soon as we can. And now the only thing you need to figure out is what you're going to cook first. So for a lot of people, when you just got a big green egg, I recommend trying a pork butt. And if you want to do that, you can watch our video on how to smoke a pork butt. Hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next time.